Good night.
Thanks, Tina. You're watching South East Today. Our top story this evening. The mother of 4 whose death in police custody from a kidney infection could have been prevented. We'll have reaction from the inquest in Maidstone. Hospitals under huge pressure as waiting times triple for mental health patients stuck in A&E.
At East Grinstead, Burley newly knighted Sir Archibald McIndoe meets 227 members of the Guinea Pig Club.
Mourning the loss of the last 2 surviving guinea pigs, the World War II airmen who had pioneering surgery in Sussex. And we're joined by one of the world's top piano soloists, Joanna McGregor, who's starring at this year's Canterbury Festival. Welcome to the programme with me, Natalie Graham. We start tonight with the inquest into the death of a mother of 4 in police custody in Kent, which has concluded it could have been prevented if she'd been assessed by a medical professional. Debbie Padley was arrested in 2021 and taken to Tunbridge Police Station, but she died from an acute kidney infection after being found unresponsive in her cell. Her family say they now want her death to be a catalyst for change, as Simon Jones reports.
She died in cell 12 at Tunbridge Police Station, but Debbie Padley's family has always had concerns about her death, concerns now shared by an inquest jury.
A big waste of life. Debbie was my daughter. She was a mother and fun and missed, very missed.
Debbie Padley was arrested in July 2021. She'd been drinking. She spent 17 hours in custody before collapsing from a kidney infection. The jury concluded she gave contradictory reports of ill health. She had complained of a headache. But despite this, her death was probably contributed to by the absence of medical intervention at least 5 hours before she died. Her death, the jury found, may possibly have been prevented.
Our unwavering commitment to seeking the truth remains absolutely paramount. Our primary objective throughout this process has been to secure accountability. Today we stand united, not solely for our own interests, but as advocates for justice, with a special focus on seeking justice for Debbie and closure for her innocent children who have endured unspeakable anguish.
The jury also found other failings in the care of Debbie Padley, a failure to carry out an adequate risk assessment when she was booked into the custody suite, and a failure to carry out proper checks when she was in her cell, though the jury said they didn't believe that had contributed to her death. Following the inquest in Maidstone, Kent Police said Mrs Padley's welfare had been consistently monitored, with a total of 35 checks to her cell in 17 hours. It said it accepted the findings of the inquest and offered sympathy to her family. Following the death, the police watchdog told the force to take urgent steps to ensure custody staff adhere to national guidance around care for detainees.
Well, that inquest finished in Maidstone a short time ago. Simon was there, and Simon, the coroner has asked to speak to Kent's Chief Constable.
Well, the coroner has asked the Chief Constable to write to him within the next 28 days to outline whether people who are taken ill in police custody now do have better access to medical professionals should they need them. Now, the independent police watchdog carried out an investigation. It found performance issues relating to 6 Kent police officers. Those officers were asked to discuss with their line managers what could have been different and reflect upon what happened. Now, Debbie's family say her death now needs to be a catalyst for change. Her mother put it very clearly when she said outside the court here that her death was preventable, and ultimately for the family, they believe she should have been in a hospital, not in a police cell.
Simon in Maidstone, thank you. Now, average waiting times for mental health patients stuck in Sussex A&E departments have more than tripled over the last 2 years, putting our hospitals under huge pressure. 2 years ago, patients needing a mental health bed faced an average wait of 2 days. But that's now gone up to 7 days, with many waiting for longer. The number of calls to the Sussex Mental Health Crisis Line has more than doubled in the last year, from 7,500 in September 2022 to 17,000 last month. And mental health demand on our hospitals is increasing all the time, with the number of patients referred to A&E for assessment up 15% in the last 4 years. Our health correspondent Mark Norman has been out with those on the front line.
This comes from police and they've allocated as mental health because the person's shouting.
No worries, I'm starting making now.
This is the Blue Light Triage Service. It's a pilot scheme in North Sussex with plans to roll it out across the county. It supports people experiencing a mental health emergency and aims to reduce the need for people who are experiencing that mental health crisis to be taken to A&E.
Last place you want to go if you're sort of emotionally distressed or mentally unwell is a high stimulus environment like A&E, and being sat in there surrounded by lots of other people in pain or in distress. So it's about trying to, again, access what they need in a calmer environment, if it's appropriate. And I think overall, since we've been doing this pilot since 2022 for a year, I think we've got conveyances down to A&E down by 20%. I'll come and have a look. Is that all right? In a second. Yeah, I'll just park up. So no mention of suicide. Okay.
Your thoughts?
So he said he doesn't want an ambulance because he doesn't want to harm anyone, which is a bit sort of vague. But so I'm going to sort of play it because obviously I work with the police. I've got a sort of a police ID as well, so I can hopefully just take it. Like, you've rung the police. I'm crewed with an ambulance today. Can we? How can we help you? And just
Brett's intervention supported the paramedics, and the caller didn't need any further assistance.
Preston Park, it's the Wellbeing Hub.
To cope with the huge increase in demand, the Mental Health Trust is working more closely with the voluntary sector. In the last few weeks, they've supported a new walk-in service in Brighton and begun placing NHS clinical staff in those voluntary sector buildings.
We're the experts in our communities. Go and speak to someone that not in an A&E department, but actually go and speak to someone with a clinician on site, work out what's the best solution for you that night of where you can actually get the best support for you.
Often there's a whole range of barriers before you can get the right support, and actually having a clinician here just means that it's easier for that clinician to refer you to the right team quicker.
As a county, Sussex has a higher prevalence of patients with a mental illness compared to the average for England. But with the county's hospital A&E departments referring almost 1,200 patients a month to mental health teams, the challenge is considerable.
So the sense of urgency is minute to minute, hour to hour, because we're working in an accident and emergency space. But what that means in practice is that the senior leaderships are talking to each other twice a day, sometimes hourly during the day, just looking to see what we might do to shift people's care along to the right place in the moment. It's not easy, it's difficult work, but people should have confidence that it is work that is making slow but steady progress.
Demand post-COVID has simply not dipped. NHS services and the voluntary sector determined to work more closely together to try and alleviate some of that demand on the wider health service.
Mark's with us now. Mark, as we know, this is a huge, complex problem for the NHS to grapple with.
Described to me today, Natalie, is fiendishly complicated, and more beds, which is the solution I came up with, simply doesn't work. Not least, how would you pay for them? How would you staff them? Many patients who are stuck in hospital beds often have multiple needs that need to be cared for by multiple organisations, and that just causes huge delay. So aside from the kind of innovations that we've seen today, they also have things they call improvement weeks. They've had a couple already. Bring all these organisations together for a week, often literally in the same space, in the same room, sometimes even taking them into A&E departments, and try and have an immediate impact on the number of patients who are stuck effectively in beds. It also helps them work more closely together, because the bottom line is they have to find another way to do this. With the demand that you mentioned at the beginning of the piece, they need to work out a way to try and get patients out of beds into the right care at the right time in the right place, but fiendishly complicated, as I said.
I don't envy them that problem. Mark, thank you very much. Now, an 8-week consultation begins today over plans for an electricity converter station and new pylons on the Minster Marshes near Ramsgate. Opponents say proposals for the 30-metre-high building in a protected area of Kent will devastate wildlife. The Sea Link project also involves the installation of an undersea electricity cable between Kent and Suffolk. National Grid say it's part of a wider programme to upgrade the entire network. A dangerous driver who tried to escape police at speeds of more than 100 miles per hour has been jailed for 14 months. Stefan Bradley from Polegate drove away from Sussex police officers who tried to speak to him on the A27 near Lewes in July. He was finally arrested in Polegate after abandoning his car and trying to run away. Police searching for a missing girl from Gillingham have released a new picture and details of a new sighting. Grace Fisher, who's 16, was reported missing on October the 13th. She was seen on CCTV footage the following morning in the Jacksonsfield area of Rochester. Police are appealing to anyone with doorbell or dash cam footage of Grace to come forward. Now, a woman in her 40s has died after a fire in a block of flats in Hove. Neighbours say her name was Louisa and she'd lived there alone for many years. Sussex police are investigating, as Jadzia Samuel reports.
6 fire engines, the police and the ambulance service, all called to a block of flats in Hangleton in Hove just after 5 a.m. Firefighters pulled a woman out from the top floor flat. She was rushed to hospital but sadly died. The Red Cross were called to help with the evacuation of the other residents. One neighbour told us he became good friends with the woman who lived here.
I've known Louisa for many, many years and I'd met her on Sunday evening. I've just come down now because my partner's bringing the dog out for a walk to learn that a fire has taken place overnight. I'd seen the fire engines this morning at 6 o'clock and I started work, not thinking anything. I'm absolutely shocked, devastated.
The area surrounding the building, including a public library, has been cordoned off and a strong police presence has remained in place throughout the day. We've been speaking with friends and neighbours who knew the woman who lived here. We understand her name was Louisa. She was in her 40s, and we've been told that she was an active part of the community, having lived here for more than 10 years.
I am 2 blocks up. However, it's a member of the community. So what happens in the community affects everyone in the community. There's a loss of life, and that makes us all incredibly sad.
East Sussex Fire and Rescue Service and Sussex Police say investigations are now underway to establish exactly what happened here. Jadzia Samuel, BBC South East Today, Hove.
It's just coming up to 6:45. This is our top story this evening. An inquest into the death of a Kent mother of 4 in police custody has concluded it might have been prevented if she'd been assessed by a medical professional. Debbie Padley died from an acute kidney infection after being found unresponsive in her cell at Tunbridge Police Station. Also in tonight's programme, flying the flag for England, we meet the Kent volleyball players preparing to take on the best in the world.
And the weather continues to keep us on our toes. Fine today, but you know what's on its way. I'll give you a full forecast later on in the programme.
And if you have a story for us, then we would love to hear from you. You can email southeasttoday@bbc.co.uk, or you can get in touch with the team via Twitter, Facebook or Instagram. In World War II, young airmen who'd suffered terrible burns were brought to East Grinstead for pioneering surgery. They called themselves the Guinea Pig Club because of the experimental nature of their treatment. By the end of the war, there were 649 of them. But sadly, the last 2 surviving members have died this month, both at the age of 101. As Peter Whittlesey reports, it's the end of an extraordinary story of friendship, hope and triumph over adversity.
This week, Pathé News went to the world's most exclusive club. At East Grinstead, Burley, newly knighted Sir Archibald McIndoe meets 227 members of the Guinea Pig Club.
The club was so exclusive because the conditions of membership were arduous in the extreme. Terrible pain and suffering from burns and crash-related injuries, coupled for many with psychological trauma.
His magic hands have given new limbs and new faces to burned and mutilated airmen.
The last two remaining members died this month, Sam Gallup and Jan Stangrichuk, both aged 101.
It's now 82 years since it was formed. When it got to 50 years, they had an annual general meeting and they said that they were going to disband. And then they all stood up and said, no, we're not. We're going to go on till the last two can survive, raise their glasses to the club. And it's gone on 82 years. And now finally, the last two coincidentally died within sort of 2 weeks or 3 weeks to each other.
When he died, Sam Gallup was chairman of the Guinea Pig Club.
I lost both my legs and I had maxillofacial injuries and a crush fracture of the spine, both arms broken. I lost my ring finger. And to come here and to feel that you were having the best medical treatment in the world and the inspiration of all the other patients was absolutely life-changing.
As a theatre technician, Bob Marchant witnessed the life-changing surgery carried out by Archibald Mackindo, and as secretary of the club, he got to know its members like Jan Stangrichuk.
He was a Polish pilot who came over, volunteered to join the Air Force, and then he went out and his Wellington bomber malfunctioned and he crash-landed and got badly burnt. He tried to rescue some of the other team in the crew, but then he had to get out because he was so badly burnt.
In a few days, this skin will be actually growing on a burns patient.
Medically, Mackindo was clearly ahead of his time, but he wanted to rebuild the body and the mind. It's that legacy that has never been forgotten.
Mackindo found that these chaps were only 24 or 25-year-old and they've got to get back out into society. So he then went out into the town and said, I'm going to send my chaps out. Don't stare at them. They got their disfigurement, really, through fighting for you. The town then became the East Grinstead's town that didn't stare.
And a community that's keen to commemorate the history of the Guinea Pig Club. Peter Whittlesey, BBC South East Today, East Grinstead.
Now, one of the world's most celebrated musicians is preparing to give a series of solo performances in Kent. The pianist Joanna McGregor, who lives in Sussex, will perform the works of Schubert on Friday, Saturday and Sunday as a star of the Canterbury Festival. We're going to have a chat with Joanna, who's here in the studio in a moment. But first, here's a flavour of her truly extraordinary talent.
These little extra left-hand bass bits that he introduces, don't throw them away, just point them up a bit. They're almost comical, really. It's over in an instant, but it's quite a violent little piece of keyboard writing in 9/8 with lots of scurrying.
We took you on a right trip down memory lane there, didn't we?
Young in some of those.
But doesn't that make, well, it made us realise what an incredible career you've had, conductor as well as pianist. Are you a pianist, though, first and foremost?
Completely and totally. I mean, I sort of live and die by the piano. I love practising. I've just come straight from home where I was practising Schubert all day.
And how's it going ahead of Sunday?
Well, it's the most massive thing. You know, it's about 10 hours of Schubert, I suppose, spread over 6 recitals. I did the complete Beethoven sonatas for Canterbury Festival a few years ago, and they've asked me back to do a similarly
immersive thing. And of course Schubert is just incredible music. It's beautiful, melodic, psychologically dark, dramatic, touching. It's marvellous music to play.
Now you live in East Sussex, you're performing in Canterbury, but you're also heavily involved in, I know, the music business in Brighton, aren't you, with the Philharmonic there?
Yes, I became the music director of Brighton Philharmonic 3 or 4 years ago. I'm only the 4th music director, although it's going to be 100 years old next year. And I've been having a wonderful time. We opened last week at the Brighton Dome with an American programme. And what I really love is our audiences are getting younger and younger, because it's very important to us to reach out to young music lovers. And, you know, we look out and we see these, you know, youngsters from about the age of 3 up to
really?
18, you know.
And that's interesting, because so many people are worried about the future of music, particularly in this country after the pandemic and the last few years. And there's, as we know, less and less music being taught in schools. So are you optimistic about the future?
Well, all of us musicians do whatever we can to reach, you know, younger players, because there are the players of tomorrow and we have to find them. I'm the head of piano at the Royal Academy of Music, and I spend a lot of time teaching young pianists, but also just for audiences and for general love of music. Yeah, we're doing everything we can to.
And you clearly haven't lost your love of performing the classics to an audience. How does that feel?
It's very interesting, because it's going back to the grounding experience of being a musician. So when you're involved with Schubert, as I will be in Canterbury starting on Friday, it is like the absolute core of everything that happens as a musician. You're with someone who's an enormous figure in music, and from that everything fans out. You know, being a conductor, composing, talking to audiences, everything comes out of that. But of course what you really want to do is to be very involved closely with this great art form.
Lots of hard work involved, I know, behind the scenes. So I'm assuming you've got several more days of practising away in East Sussex before you get to Canterbury.
Yes, indeed. Yes, yes. My husband will be putting up with it.
I can think of worse things to put up with, Joanna. Thank you very much indeed. And
thank you.
Enjoy the weekend's performances, won't you? Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Now, both our League Two football teams are in action this evening. Gillingham are hoping to end a run of 6 straight away defeats in all competitions when they visit Swindon Town later. And Crawley are also away from home. They're at Walsall. Both games kick off at 7:45. And young volleyball players from the Invicta Club in Kent are travelling to Finland this week to represent their country in international competition. They're competing with the England under-19 volleyball squad with high hopes of turning professional. Our sports reporter James Dunn has more.
Hitting hard, jumping high, these are some of the country's most promising volleyball players. With dreams of going pro, finding out they'd be travelling to Finland this weekend to test themselves against world-class opposition was a special moment.
I was jumping and screaming around the house, I'll be honest.
This is once-in-a-lifetime experience and looking forward to it. Great to put on my CV, so it will teach me a lot, I think.
Here in Kent, they're building a squad stacked with talent. Topper is also in the England setup for the under-17s.
There's a lot of people that are here at a high standard. When I started volleyball, this is the first place I came to, and I've been enjoying it ever since. The coaching is good, and I enjoy the people that I play with as well. The environment's nice.
In this week's tournament, they'll compete against nations like Sweden and Norway, which have professional volleyball teams. Here, there's no public funding for a Team GB squad even. But they're coached by Luke Thomas, who used to train coaches for Volleyball England, and he's now got his sights set on one big ambition.
We're trying to make one of the first professional volleyball programmes in the UK. It's not a professional sport yet, but there are pockets for development. We have a couple of players already through to the National Junior programme. We're hoping that we'll get some players into the senior team as well, and we're hoping to be able to recruit players from elsewhere to come and play with us here in Maidstone and Canterbury.
Ever since I first fell in love with the sport, I want to become professional. I told myself the first few months I started playing, I want to play for England. I did that. I told myself I want to go to this tournament. I did that. And now it's just a matter of going professional, which is a big step.
It'll take quite a leap if these young players want to establish British volleyball on the world scene. But on their current trajectory, you'd think nothing would block them from one day going pro. James Dunn, BBC South East Today, Maidstone.
I think indoor sports are the way to go over the next few weeks. You're going to mention the word unsettled, aren't you, John Hammond?
Well, a bit like volleyball, it's all up in the air. Yeah, anyway, moving swiftly on. We are a week away from Halloween, and today the weather's been a bit of trick or treat, hasn't it? It was lovely for a time, some beautiful sunshine out there in Maidstone, just a little bit of fluffy fair weather cloud, and then we saw some really heavy showers, particularly affecting coastal areas. But actually the message over the next several days, as Natalie hinted, is that things are going to turn pretty disturbed with some unseasonal weather, in as much as too much rain in a short space of time. Of course, we've avoided the worst of the rain, haven't we, over the last week or so? But if I run this little sequence of a computer forecast of rainfall across the UK through the rest of this week, you can see that across our part of the country, we are going to see quite a lot. In fact, more than areas further north. And just a hint that some places, particularly towards the coast, could see upwards of 50 millimetres of rain. So that could cause some issues with time, particularly as we head towards the weekend. So keep your eye on the forecast, because there could be some impacts. And to get us in the mood, a warning from the Met Office tonight. A yellow warning. That's not the highest tier by any stretch of the imagination, but some unwanted rain as we head into the night, particularly if you're on the road. It could be quite nasty. We've already got some showers, and thundery showers have been pecking away at the coast, as I mentioned, but the main event is to the southwest of us, and that rain is going to sweep in later on this evening, and particularly overnight. Some heavy bursts, maybe the odd clap of thunder out there as we go through the early hours. Temperatures of no consequence really. They'll be down to around about 8 or 9 degrees at the lowest. But it'll be a soggy old start probably where you are. You'll need something waterproof as you step out first thing in the morning. That rain will take a while to shift. Some uncertainty about how quickly it does, but eventually something a bit drier coming in from the west. It might take longer though for the cloud to break up. So it's going to be a cool feeling day, I reckon, with the wind coming down from the north, 13 or 14 degrees. The best I can offer you. Still the chance of the odd shower into the afternoon, particularly again down towards the coast. But a getting better sort of day. Doesn't last though, because we're going to see another area of rain sweeping in on Thursday morning. That'll clear through, some brightness developing, but then, yep, more showers, and these could be quite heavy and possibly thundery once again on Thursday. You get the idea. It's chopping and changing all the while, isn't it? Well, get used to it, because as we end the week and into the weekend, more areas of low pressure sweeping in. The wind's picking up as well. So that combination of some heavy rain at times and some pretty strong winds, particularly towards the weekend, as I say, Natalie, going to cause some impacts.
You're telling us to get used to it.
I know, it's going to get colder into November as well.
Oh, thanks very much, John. Right, sorry about that. That's it from us this evening. I will be back after the national news at 10. Join us then. Bye-bye.
Making it to the top of your game is the dream for so many people.